What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mindful CEO podcast. You're catching us right in the middle of a conversation. We're like, we should hit record.
Yeah,
So
as always.
and I mean, you never know. We're trying to we're talking through stuff for our own purposes, for our community, and then we're like, this is important stuff. So we were talking about intention, striving versus intention, non-striving versus intention. And we don't need an answer, but we do want an intention. We want to go in a particular direction. I'm just giving them the world of it. Maybe
Yeah. That's right.
Pick that up where I left off.
What we were grappling with, we were talking about was, since rebranding to the Mindful CEO, I have the experience after the podcasts, just to check into my experience as if that were a measure of something. Was that fun? How was that? Did that get something done? And the number of times that I was left that way in the prior iteration of the podcast versus this iteration, it was more than, right? These podcasts have been fine, but it haven't left me with, wow, that was really useful to get out for myself. And what I think has been missing is this world of intention. In the previous iteration of this, repurpose, we had an intention that this make a difference for realtors.
Yeah.
That this be a home for realtors, and that leadership leverage and legacy, right? In a context of love, Mr. Mayor, we hear you, Michael. That had an intention that was going a particular direction. And then we've, shifted context to include more people, CEOs, anyone who's a CEO of their life, anyone who has, but that world also has an intention. And I think I've dropped that out. We've been wandering, but without an intention. There's mumbling, but without the intention that a song show up.
Right.
And there's a world of, in mindfulness, one of the pillars of mindfulness is non-striving. And that's a really interesting dynamic when you have an intention and a commitment and a direction.
Yeah.
But to play with that as inside non-striving occurs like a paradox.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because we are striving to go someplace in particular, but we're not, and we are. And if you're not and you are, you really get something. Anything you want to say about that? Because I have another thought about it. But
I think when we look at our triangle here up in the corner of my screen here, but we've got mindfulness is one of the three sides of this triangle. Another one is mission, and I think mission really speaks to intention. It speaks to direction. Yeah. I think you could pursue a mission. I think you could head in the direction of a mission and an intention in a manner of non-striving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, what strikes me is I remember in the self-expression leadership program back in the day, that distinction between being committed and attached is a wildly effective and a wildly productive distinction, and mind-blowing at the time. And I was probably 30, half as old, right? I was half the age I am now. And that's a mind-blowing distinction, and it speaks directly to this. Yeah. That being committed to an outcome, if the outcome is not produced, you're left with a commitment to the outcome.
Yeah.
When you're committed to an outcome, you're committed to, your infinite game being fulfilled.
Yep.
You're committed to the fulfillment of your mission. Every action you take is inside the fulfillment of that mission. And then if the mission is not yet fulfilled, which in an infinite game, it
never is,
you're left with looking newly as to the next action. That all has the qualities of non-striving. Attachment is you take an action and the mission's not fulfilled, but you are attached to the outcome. You needed it to look a particular way. You needed it to show up at a particular time. It must happen. Yeah. You're attached to the outcome. It has to look like this. And when that doesn't happen, you're left upset, disempowered, and, frustrated, annoyed, irritated, resigned, upset. All that shows up when one is attached. And that has all the elements of striving.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really, really potent distinction for people that people don't get. in general is the world of being committed to and a result.
Yeah.
As access, or as if it's not access to, it's at least parallel to
Yeah.
the world of nine striving and the pillars of mindfulness. So that's, I think, where we want to play.
There's a lot of good. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. You
No,
talk.
you go.
No,
You
no.
go.
Oh no, I feel like the chipmunks.
Well, I think part of the if I think about the world of mindfulness or law of attraction or being versus doing, like they're separate camps. There's Abraham and the whole thing around, just don't do it. Give it over to the universe and it'll do it. And there's a whole worldview that comes there. And I've hung out with people in masterminds who listen to The Secret but are more doers, and they're like, the problem with The Secret is they just don't account for you got to do stuff. And then there's people in the doing camp who are like, being is, who cares about being? You just got to do. And so I think one of the things that this conversation is providing in the Mindful CEO is, and it's in the name of this brand, right, is bridging these worlds of production as a CEO and mindfulness. I love Venn diagram. So in a Venn diagram, we've got these two things overlapping, and I think we're providing a bridge to both of these worlds.
Yeah.
You can have both and.
You can have both and that really is the critical piece here. That was what Alan was talking about when Alan Kahn was on.
Yeah.
And because I'm old, I can't remember the woman's name who he was working with, but she was insistent that mindfulness is not meditation, that you can meditate and be mindful, but mindfulness is required, or there's an opportunity for mindfulness in the moment. And that's where mindfulness shows up, is in the getting of the coffee, in the, pulling up to the red light, in the speaking to a coworker about, whatever needs to happen. Having mindfulness show up in the moment is really where we're in the fulfillment of a mission, and I think there's a element of aliveness. And like, I don't know if we said it after we started recording or before, but an edge,
that's before,
and excitement, out on the tip of something when you're moving in the direction of the fulfillment of a mission. And having fun and play and lightness and non-attachment and grace and patience and loving kindness and all of that on the tip of the spear, heading toward the fulfillment of your mission. Is, it's sort of a violent metaphor, but is the point of this conversation, is really what we're up to. So we want people, I think it's important that we keep our mission, clear, our vision, our, where you and I, our Venn diagrams of our respective purposes in life, where people have the experience of agency, of their own agency, and yours of when leaders lead, the world will change, where do those overlap? And that's where you and I get to play. And then for anyone listening, right, for our 5 listeners, the opportunity for you to map your mission into mindfulness, mission, mastermind, to see, but to never, and we haven't really, I think that's sort of where we haven't really explored in this podcast yet, is the fulfillment of mission and the application of mindfulness. And it's such a paradox. It's such a thing to play with, because as soon as you say the application of mindfulness in the fulfillment of a mission, it turns it into doing something, right, to get somewhere.
Yes. But there's something in that is like, and this might be the place where the nuance is helpful. If I am treating it like art, if I'm treating it like building a cathedral versus, chiseling stone, to use an old metaphor we've used, right? Like that, the way in which I'm holding this mission is one that is playful, creative. So I am an artist in the thing that I am intending. I think that it doesn't, this is some work I've been doing the last year. It's just been like reframing this for myself, because I came from such an attachment to a result. And I'm now looking at, if this were my life's work and not like an annual goal, right? If this was something I was doing the rest of my life, one, it opens up a little bit of freedom. Like I'm not constrained by time. But two, I get to start thinking about like, okay, well, in what iteration do I want to mumble through this year?
Yeah.
And mumbling now is headed in a direction. I'm gonna mumble through these chords and find a song and see what lyrics show up. But it doesn't occur like a problem. It doesn't occur like pressure.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great place. And we were talking about that earlier, like even in the mumbling of something, there's a difference between mumbling and then mumbling with the intention to discover a song.
Yeah.
Mumbling, you're not well, you're crazy. I was thinking you're a crazy person on the street. Like you're just mumbling, you're just walking around mumbling. That's not the same thing as mumbling with an intention that a song show up that speaks to you. And, I think it's the difference. I'm going to say it and then we'll see if I actually think this. The difference between mindfulness and mindlessness, that although normally when we speak of mindlessness, we're talking about you on automatic or me on automatic, just going through the motions of our day without stopping and breathing and getting present. We're on default. We're on the normal. That's how we've defined mindlessness in the past, is that. And I think it's totally accurate and really useful and valuable. But there is another level of mindlessness. And we were talking about this, Chris, in reference to, one of the other groups, your other group that I'm in, without an intention, without a direction, without a place to head that's articulated, you're just you're just wandering. And I don't mean just wandering like to diminish this importance of taking time to just wander without an intention.
Sure.
To just wander. And I think that's it's okay. So it's a whole new tangent, right? It's shocking. But again, I remember one of my, the hardest things or most mind-blowing things I had in my training as a leader was when my coach told me to make the calls without an agenda.
Wow.
And now I'm doing the work of whatever I was doing. At that time I was phoning people, but it doesn't really matter what the action is. Can you do it without an agenda? That's that world there. And then it becomes, okay, well, why am I doing it at all? Right? If I don't have an agenda, what am I doing it? But we all know, if any of you are in sales, and you all know that, you get a call from someone and they have an agenda, it's over. I mean, you're not interested. 100%, almost 100% of the time, you have no interest in that service. If you're getting on the phone with them and it's their agendas on the phone. And then the questions come up like, okay, well, is it an agenda for me to be interested in discovering what matters to them? That's an agenda, right? Can I have in a conversation? So I think it's in the play there. It's in the playing with that. The personal discovery of what am I attached to? What's my agenda in this? Getting present to it. It reminds me of what Alan was talking about when people get present. I forgot the acronym, but that they use to get present, but they, what's present for me physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then any request or anything, what I forgot what the 4 things were. There was an acronym for it. I'll have to go back and listen. But to just get present to the agenda, be mindful about your agenda, and then you have an access to doing something else, to actually getting interested, wonder, listening, curiosity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It,
Good.
I was just, one of the things that came up for me is if, I was seeing about how Abraham Hicks will talk about being general versus specific. And, and that can be really helpful when you're trying to stay when you're trying to stay unattached. If I get too specific in a particular desire, a rocket of desire, I say, I want this much money, or I want this many members of a community, or I get too specific and I start to fear it or resent it or get frustrated by it. To go more general in how I think about, intend about, be mindful about the intention, to say, I love when people get together. I love it when people share deep conversations. To stay general about the intention, about the direction or the desire. How I want to apply that here is, if I think about what you and I did with a rebrand and the Mindful CEO, you could say, like, we haven't had an intention or the edge of an intention. And we are generally headed in the direction of a general intention about this rebrand. Like, we can reach more people was part of the intention.
Yep.
Mindfulness is more than a real estate conversation. We still have an intention to grow our community. We have an intention to mumble through these. I mean, it's more general than it is specific.
Yeah.
And I think the further we go down it, and I say that because you had said earlier, like, then otherwise it's just a walk. It's just I don't know how you said that. You're like, it's just
wandering around.
You're just wandering. And but I think you and I we have more intention in it than just wandering. And I think most people who would listen to a podcast like this that are headed somewhere, it's more than just wandering. But that's worth bringing some mindfulness to. It's bringing some awareness to, like, in what ways is it intentional, and in what ways could I bring more focus?
Totally. I think it's managing the dynamics of those conversations. Because look, we have that intention is how this showed up is missing. We were weighting the scale toward mindfulness and not towards mission. That only showed up because and that's the important part about a mission and intention, whatever word we want to put in there. But that's one of the critical aspects of it. One of the critical things it provides is it gives you a chance to be true to something. Yeah. It allows you to true yourself up to something. Because without that mission, anywhere you go is fine. Anywhere you go is as good as any other place. And I definitely don't think that's the case. I have said that's not the case for me. It's not, well, do I feel like being married again today? I don't care. Whatever happens, happens. Right. See who else I meet. Right. See what else shows up at my door, and that's not the way I live with my marriage. Yeah. Right. I have a commitment, and I'm, that thing stay nurtured and growing, and that she is empowered out to fulfill what she's up to in life. And everything that I do, if it doesn't show up like empowering her to fulfill what she's up to, then that's my problem. Yeah. Because I have that mission to have that happen. So I get to true myself up to that. And that's so much, and there's that paradoxical relationship between being committed and attached. There's a line between being committed and attached. There's a line between being driven for a result and being committed to the fulfillment of something. Yeah. I think we often, and this is a Esther Hicks thing for sure, is, you don't get to say how or when. Yeah. Yeah. What you want shows up. You just get to know that it's showing up, and the universe is going to figure out how to have it show up to you, but you don't get to say how or when. I think it shows up.
It's true in songwriting. You can't force a song. Yeah. You can strum, and you can mumble, and you can put time in. You can follow the muse, but you can't fully say when it develops, but you could apply yourself. Yeah, I think if I were out to write a song and I put hours in versus no hours in, I think the probable outcome is to get a song. I'm more likely to get a song by putting hours in than I am by not putting any hours in.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris. That's okay. So I think that's we could do a whole series on this. In fact, make a note, because I think we want to add this to the mastermind. Sorry, I said make a note like you're the fucking water boy. Sorry about that.
I take notes, but I do.
I know, but the way I said it was really very much like,
I'll be your water boy.
You are my water boy.
Purified water.
I don't I have a commitment that
don't lose it. Say it. Just say it. I'm good.
There is a whole world in, the amount of action required to produce a result from all the different paradigms in which you and I play. There's and I think it's a circle, frankly. I think there's variations of it. But by that, I mean, there's definitely I don't think it's a line. I don't think it's the only thing in the world that produces result is action. And the only thing in the world that produces results is your vibration. I don't think that's a line. I think that's a circle.
Got it.
I think those are saying the same thing, right? I think there's a way in which those two principles can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it lives for people like those are diametrically opposed. And you can't have one and the other at the same time. And I don't think that's accurate. So I think that's a whole separate show, at least, and definitely something in the workshop to engage in, right? Because another M, right? In addition to what we got. Did we have manifesting?
No.
Oh, see, another M for us.
Good. Let's just collect those.
Let's collect M's.
We're gonna collect the M's.
I know. Well, you're the alliteration king. So
this podcast is sponsored by the letter M.
That's right. But that world of manifestation and is connected to this world of mindfulness and mission.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, that could be the third M, and mastermind is just sort of a container in which we rock on those three things. Yeah. We're allowed to change that. So anyway, yeah. So but you were talking about that world, and I think being connected, grounded in a calling, being grounded and connected in a mission or an intention, or you could say you have an intention to fulfill your calling or realize your mission in the world. What I was experiencing or expressing as a lack of an edge.
Yeah.
Right. Really is, could also, I think, be said as a lack, like what there was no tuning. There was nothing, tuning something. Again, I'm going to make a reference to something I don't do, which is be a musician. Okay. So I did anyway, too much of a tangent. Tuning is a reference. There's different tunings in different cultures. Indian music uses a completely different scale than what we consider to be the scale. So C sharp is only C sharp in reference to a particular literally a vibration of molecules at a particular frequency. As that frequency, someone's named that C sharp.
Right.
And so when you tune your guitar or whatever, you're tuning it to a standard.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's all kinds of tunings that you can do on guitars or sitars or whatever you're playing that make it consistent with the standard.
Yeah.
Right. And, and when someone's out of tune, they're out of tune. They're just, they are heard as discordant to the intention of whatever that is, the container that holds that. And I think there's stuff to explore in there because, you're holding a standard, but you're not. I think it's important to recognize that standard was invented.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah.
It doesn't I mean, it sounds good to your ear, but different cultures have different standards, different musical cultures. Same thing with art, visual art.
Yeah.
And then there are standards of how things are done, the way things are done. And is your mission, inside that container, or is your mission specifically to break that container? Because there are things that show up in our, world that break containers all the time about the way things are done. So it's important for you or me or anyone to be able to say, yep, I'm sitting inside this container. This is where my difference gets made, is inside the standard, that everyone uses, or not. My job is to break this standard, and I'm going to do that by using these standards along the way. Those are all part and parcel, and you're always truing yourself up to that, right?
Yeah. I think that's where mindfulness can really be helpful in mission, is because I noticed for myself, for a lot of years in business, I was resentful of or resisting the standard of what other people had named the standard. This is how you do sales calls. This is how you market. This is how you create a landing page. This is how you do a Facebook ad. And I would try it for a bit, and then I get frustrated by it and try something new. And I wasn't bringing mindfulness to. I mean, it took me a while. I eventually did, but originally I just was trying to force the result. Very attached, by the way, very attached to this standard producing a result for me, and not being aware, bringing an awareness to what works about this, what doesn't work about this. How does this honor me? How does this not honor? Like, just the whole thing about how do I design a world that works for me was not a conversation I was having. I was like, I'm in my attachment, how do I produce a result, was the conversation. And if I think about, in a past conversation or episode, I talked about the book Louder Than Words. And there was a metaphor in there about a tree that it was, the author was talking to a music artist, a musician, speaking of music. And the musician was saying about, like, in the beginning, your music will sound like other people's music. It's like at the base of a tree. We're all learning and borrowing from, to use your word, the same standard. Like we're copying. We're all copying. We're like, I'm going to play G, C, D. Like you can play any song with G, C, D. And at some point you start to branch out on the tree and start to pursue a particular genre or niche of music. You're like, okay, well, I prefer rock than classical. And so you go out on the limb called rock and roll. And as you go further out on the limb of rock and roll, you might decide you like, heavy metal. And as you go further out, at some point, what happens is, if you keep pursuing, or maybe let me say questioning, how do I want to do my work, and what's the next creative place for me? You could end up on a branch of your own, right? Which, and for some people is what we want. Other people might say, I don't need a branch of my own. I can produce what I want to produce inside of, G, C, and D. But I think that's the journey here of bringing our fingerprint to our important work. You have a work you want to do. And are you going to do that inside someone else's standard? Or are you going to continue to go out on the branch till you find a branch of your own, which is what Bruce Lee did when he created his own form of martial arts? Like, at some level, are we creating our own way of doing this mission? That may be more than we need in this conversation, but I just think that I'm seeing some places where mindfulness on the journey is helpful, because it allows you to either submit to the standard that's there or create your own. You're not a prisoner.
Good. There's two things, Chris, or more. I don't know. We'll see how many things we'll count at the end. It's very important that we start our sentences with how many things we're about to announce. If you don't do that, everything's ruined. So there's the rebellion against the standard.
Yeah.
The knee-jerk reaction, fight the power. Not going to do it that way. I don't have to make cold calls. But none, if not done mindfully, is as you're now, that duality of standard, not standard. I'm going to do it some other way. From a knee-jerk perspective, whatever your business is, right, doesn't have any more mindfulness, doesn't have any more intention other than, I'm not going to do it that way. So there's unlikely, in my experience, to be fulfilling
Yeah.
I'm not going to be my parents is a very different experience from, okay, who am I going to be?
Yep.
Right. So I think there's a world inside that. Are you reacting to the standard, or are you actually creating a new standard, or are you doing something else? So there's that inquiry that's worth having, right? Rather than just being a knee-jerk no.
Right.
I'm going to, actually be mindful and notice, oh, I have a reaction to this. Is this valid or not? It's funny. I just made this little journal to help people do cold calling because, in a very real result producing context, cold calling works and where very little else does. And, but when one can get, I think the immediate thought for people doing cold calling, almost everyone who does it is, I hate this. Right. I don't like it. It's intrusive. I'm a telemarketer, all the automatic things that are there for it. But when people slow down enough to get present to, okay, well, what's my intention here? What am I providing? What am I providing for myself? And what am I providing for my family? And what am I providing for the people I'm calling? What's the gift that I am to the people I'm calling? And that begins to show up and get present. Then you can start to get related to, okay, well, what's the advantage? What am I out to accomplish in this phoning session versus what's the worst thing that could happen? The pros and the cons, the pluses and the minuses of this phoning agreement. And when people stop and do that work, and maybe it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do that, you're wildly empowered to actually make the difference that you are out to make in the world by being on the phone. And I don't mean just not even cold calling. I mean, cold calling, because it has that world of telemarketing attached to it. But just calling anybody about any request that you have, and requests are what make the world move. So, there's that world of noticing what's already there for me about the thing I'm about to do, that we're calling mindfulness, bringing a state of mindfulness to it that includes the standard called, well, fuck it, I'm not going to cold call. I'm just going to go do this. Right. Okay. But without mindfulness, now, whatever this is unlikely to be empowering because it's just a reaction. That was one thing about what you said I thought was really worth underlining. And then there was another thing, because I had said two things, but I can't remember what it was. The trees, the leaves, the branches.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what you were saying in terms of, I don't know that it's possible. Well, I'm sure it's possible, but I think it's an empowering place to stand, to consider that if you honor the container, the standard, right, as the standard, as the container, and you just stand there, you'll find that you are in your own unique place. That I'm thinking about Stevie Ray Vaughan, or anyone who plays the blues, Lightning Hopkins, BB King, anyone who is strictly blues, not Clapton, who went into rock and roll, but really just, Stevie Ray Vaughan straddles that, but just even Lightning Hopkins, John Lee Hooker, anyone like that. They're a leaf. That's a leaf on a branch. That's a unique. Lightning Hopkins is completely unique to John Lee Hooker, completely unique to Blind Lemon Jefferson, completely unique to any of the each a leaf on the branch of called blues, but completely inside the container, the standard of what makes a blues song, but completely inside that. And then there's people like Clapton, right, who, took that and said, okay, well, here's the standard. Now we're going to grow it to include this thing called rock and roll. And those two things now, or Stevie Ray Vaughan, I think, is more inside that camp for sure. Well, don't want to argue about it, but And then there's people like, interesting. Okay. We're just going to get really weirdly nitty gritty about shit, but like, where does Devo come in? Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Devo inside a world of punk, which is this entire world of distorted, became this entire separate phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right. And that's outside the standard.
Right.
To a large extent, that became outside the standard. And, I think Talking Heads did a lot of that. You can say whatever you want about the standard, but we're going wherever this path leads next, and a wide variety of things, but not as a reaction to the standard,
right. As a creation or
as a creation, okay, I hear the standard and this is really this is how I hear it. So there are both completely, and I think that opportunity to stand out as a unique leaf, if we're going to get all the way out to leaves on the branch.
Yeah.
Right. And no two leaves are exactly the same. Like if you're going to get a leaf, if you're going to turn yourself into a leaf on whatever branch you are, you can do it completely inside the container.
Yeah, that's good.
Or you can do it by creating a new container. Either way.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. And both work and both are great. And one's not better than the other. And it's
definitely not.
And I think the point is, if you are tuning in, if you're being mindful about what's next for you, is intuition in any of the, it wouldn't be stated as one of the 9 mindfulness principles, but like,
it's not.
But I feel like there's an assumption that intuition kicks in when you are non-striving, when you're trusting, and I think so much creativity happens through intuition, that there is this feels right or doesn't feel right. And you don't have to decide in this moment whether you want to be a leaf or create a new branch. That's not even the intention. The intention isn't, I'm going to create a new branch. The intention is, what do I want to create?
Right.
Like, what am I present to? There was an architect that used to say he would show up at a building site, and he'd say, what does this want to be?
Right.
Have you heard of this?
I would assume it's Frank Lloyd Wright, but I don't know.
It wasn't Frank Lloyd. Anyway, I could try to find that, but I loved the idea that somebody would be present enough to the space and say, what does it want to be before it was ever designed? Like, what does this want to be? What does your important work want to be?
Great.
Did you tune into that?
And I think that's, one of the really powerful aspects of meditation, and this is, again, Esther, but, I don't know if it's all Esther, but nonetheless, prayer is, my opportunity to talk to the universe. Mindfulness, meditation is my opportunity to listen. And I think holding prayer and mindfulness in those two, or prayer and meditation in those two contexts, is useful for me. Like when I sit in meditation, what arises in that is the universe talking. And I think it's another great prompt for us, Chris, certainly in the mastermind for us, is that opportunity to follow intuition. And I think the more you do, the more I do, I know the more clearly it speaks. And that's things from like, you should go back and grab your wallet, or, did you pick that piece of paper up, or what? There are times where I'm leaving the house and I'll think I should go get that thing. And other times immediately it'll show up as, now don't bother. Come on, we're in a fucking rush. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And the more I can go, okay, no, wait a minute. Something just told me to go get that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and get that. And the more I can honor that voice about those kinds of things, the louder it speaks and the more clearly it speaks about other things as we go. And then, of course, there's the whole dynamic of, okay, well, what do you know? What's your intuition, and what's you arguing with yourself and overthinking something? Again, a line, a paradox, a place to discover. There's not an answer to that. But I think that's
and to your point, there's no wrong. There's no wrong,
right? And there's no wrong, right?
No wrong note, answer. No wrong. all an observation, all a game, all a.
Yep. That's a whole nother topic too. Is that Miles Davis quote: "There are no wrong notes." So there are no mistakes. I think that's a great place to put a pin in this.
Yeah.
this week,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of stuff that we've got now dug up, resurfaced by re-truing ourselves up to, oh yeah, we do have an intention here to
Yeah.
empower people in their whatever they're the CEO of.
Yeah.
And all the things you're the CEO of, because rarely do we meet someone who's just the CEO of one thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I would, if I had to sort of bridge that to an invitation, I would say, you and I, we haven't spoken of this explicitly, but I would say there is an intention for our Mindful CEO Mastermind. That is, what that space is, in my intention, is a place where we mindful CEOs, those of us who have mission, want to bring mindfulness to mission, can begin to work out and mumble through the actual mission, whether that's served by the conversation and topic of the mastermind, or actually having breakout sessions and working through, here's what I'm doing, what are you doing, and we're able to compare notes. That the space we're holding, you and I are holding in this mastermind, the space is there to serve your mission with mindfulness. And so if those of you listening would like to go learn more about the community that Aaron and I have created, this mastermind, you can go to themindfulceo.com, and click the appropriate links from there. And there you go. So
cool.
yeah. Awesome, Aaron. As always,
Right.
good mumble sesh. See ya.